Welcome to the TBM 930 cold start tutorial, and we're sitting in a very scenic area here at a very tiny airport in Alaska, and we will do a cold start of the TBM 930. A number of procedures in the real 930 will not, or are, well, they're not even modeled, so we'll be skipping those, but I will mention some that are sort of half modeled. And let's continue. So first things you do is make sure the parking brake's set. You don't want to be rolling away while you're trying to start. And then we're going to go up and turn the crash bar up and flip our generator on and our source to battery. I do not believe the ground power units are modeled at all in Flight Sim. And it's funny because, see, now I'm getting the Garmin boot screens. I don't always get that. Sometimes this thing instantly flips all these displays on, as if there was no boot sequence, and now I get a boot sequence that looks similar. This is a bit of a different screen, but it looks very similar to the boot sequence in the real one. So I don't know. That's actually threw me for a bit of a loop.
Okay.
Because that's the first time I've seen the Garmin boot screens in the TBM. Every other time I've done this, when I flip these on, it just, as soon as I look down, they're all on already. Maybe that was doing it, and as fast as I can go from here to here, they're on. But that's the first time I've seen them. But anyways, that's part of the startup. You would wait for the G3000s to cycle, which we did there, so they're all booted up, and then we would maybe check our multifunction display here, our MFD, and make sure that anything in the EIS, there was no warnings about starting, which there shouldn't be. It's a simulator. I would hate to see a SIM card not accessible or some error here that and then you couldn't fly. But anyways, there shouldn't be any errors in here. This is inoperable, the audio and light tests up here, but I believe the landing gear one is good, so we can check that. Hold that in, make sure that all your landing gear lights are operable. After that, we're going to go ahead and go up to the top panel here and make sure your ignition is on auto. If this were off for some reason, you could turn it on or just leave it on auto, and then ignition's always in the proper mode, ready for you to move the starter to the on position. And we're going to do that next, but before we do, I'll just do a little bit of an explanation here. When we click this up, you would normally start a timer on your dash right here for 30 seconds. And that timer is very important to sort of understand if there's anything wrong with the engine. You need to start it and have it reach certain minimums within 30 seconds. I think 30% in 30 seconds is the minimum. It should be well above that. But anyways, there's no need to do that. I don't think it's ever going to not start for you or give you some type of error that prevents you from flying and having to get the plane serviced. We're definitely not that realistic. Anyways. So when we do flip that ignition switch to on, what's going to happen is you're going to come down here and you're going to want to monitor your ITT temperature and your NG percentage. The first thing that's going to happen is the percentage will get to about 13%, and when you do that, you're going to want to come down here to your throttle, which is in cutoff right now. Normally, actually, you'd want to make sure that your fuel tanks, one of your fuel tanks, are selected, because normally it would be in the off position, but either way, make sure your fuel tank is selected. This is in the cutoff position. As soon as that hits 13%, we're going to move this throttle up to the first position, which is low idle, and then we're going to come back here and monitor NG, and when NG gets to green, which is around 52 or 53%, as soon as this starts to get to 52 or 53, we can come back down here and move this to high idle, and then immediately over to our throttle position in taxi. And from there we'll continue. But I just wanted to give you a heads up. We're going to go up, flip ignition on, wait for 13%, move from cutoff to low idle, look back up for green. Once we get green, we can move to high idle and over to taxi. And this is what that looks like. Whoops. Click starter on. Wait for our NG percentage to reach 13. When it gets to about 10, I start looking down, because with the track IR, it's hard to grab some of these things. And now we're going to wait for this to get green, into the green range here at 52 or 3%. There we go, we're good. So once that reaches green range, we can move down to this and grab it and put it into high idle, and then immediately over to our throttle position in taxi. And if you left it in high idle, actually your temperature will start climbing actually much faster in the sim than it really does. So you wouldn't want your temperature to be above 800 for more than 20 seconds or something. That might be a little bit off the AFM, but it's pretty close. Something along those lines. You wouldn't want your engine to be overheating. You could do damage to it in that. So from there, we want to go to the auxiliary boost pump and click auto. Sometimes these switches can be a little bit of a pain in the butt with your track IR, because you're moving your head around like this and trying to grab the switch at the same time. So you kind of get used to keeping your head very, very still. And now the next thing we're going to do is switch fuel selection to auto, but I'm going to explain it first so you understand what you're looking at on these screens all the time. First of all, your warning here, auto cell. That's auto selection, and that's referring to that switch, the auto selection of fuel. So if you see that, what actually is happening is you're in manual fuel selection mode, and you might get fuel imbalance. I can't remember the actual warning on here. It might just be fuel imbal or something like that. But anyways, what that means when you get fuel imbal is you're really draining only from the left tank here, and you need to switch. You need to switch this selector, which I can never grab. There we go. And flip it over to the right tank. Now it's draining from the right tank. If you had a problem with the system and had to manually select which tank to take from, that's how you would do that. But you don't want to do that, because while you're flying, you're going to get an imbalance in your fuel quantities left to right, and it's going to change the flight characteristics of your plane. So it doesn't matter which one it's on here. We can go up next and select, and notice on the IES or the EIS here, you've got auto cell. So as soon as we get up here, that's what that warning is. So we're going to go click fuel selection to auto, and that warning should have disappeared. It has, so that's good. Now we don't have to worry about this. The next thing to do is to consider our pressurization systems, which we want to bring to auto. And this just makes sure that our cabin is pressurized. You can see your pressurization information on differential PSI and altitude, cabin pressure, and rate. This is the rate at which it will pressurize. So you might see something like, it's kind of counterintuitive. It says minus 500, and that means that it's pressurizing the cabin to the equivalent of 500 feet per minute. And that sounds kind of strange, but if you see the altimeter in feet here, what this gauge will tell us is our cabin pressurization is the equivalent of this many feet. So we might be at 30,000 feet, and this will say 9,500, and that's basically telling us that the internal cabin pressurization of our aircraft is at 9,500. So it feels like we're at 9,500 feet, even though we're at 30,000 feet. And if you were to dump the pressure for some reason here and go on oxygen, you would see this drop down to the go up to the equivalent of 30,000 feet, because you just dumped all the pressure. Now we're at the equivalent of 30,000 feet. This would start rate feet per minute, start kicking in to the maximum of what the system's capable of, which I think is something like 500 feet per minute. And you'd see minus 500, and this would be counting down from 30,000 feet to probably 9,500 or something like that if you were at 30,000 feet at a rate of 500 feet per minute. So it would take you, quite a few minutes to regain cabin pressurization if for some reason you dumped it at that high altitude. And this PSI is just the differential in pounds per square inch between outside and in the cabin. But anyways, maybe that was an over explanation of the pressurization system, but you want to flip that to auto. That's your next step. And then also, I guess that's it. I'm going to make another video for, essentially, if you're good to go at this point, your aircraft is started, you're clean, and you're basically ready for the next phase of loading your flight data and getting clearance for your filed IFR if you did, and clearance to taxi. But that's kind of along the lines of, I think I'm going to do a video next about loading your flight data and then getting ready to taxi and authorizations. But if you were from this point to just want to go ahead and taxi, you'd want to make sure that your pitot heaters are on, Actually, I'll come back to the inertial separation. You get your lights on, probably flip your autopilot switch on, put your your altitude information for your autopilot in here about your whatever your departure chart or whatever your clearance from the tower was, get it in there. Things along that nature. You don't want to put your flaps down until you get ready on the runway. You don't want to be doing that while taxiing. You might want to set up your autopilot with your vertical speed for your climb out if you're not flying it manually. But anyways, as far as a cold start goes, this is it. And I'll just mention quickly too, I'll probably go over this again in the video about getting ready to taxi, but your inertial separator, you would also want to flip that on if you're going to taxi, because that prevents debris from getting in your air intake, especially on a scenic airport like this that's all gravel. That's actually a requirement to flip that on before starting your taxi. And then with that is a cold start in a TBM 930. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will do some more videos about loading flight data and taxiing and then takeoff and V-speeds and kind of the idea I want here is to go through everything TBM related, from cold start to shutdown at the other end and everything in between. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you stay with me for the rest of the series. If there's anything you like or dislike about it, let me know. I mean, I'm doing it because it's fun and I enjoy the TBM, and I don't mind sharing the information that I have with the community. I think that's one of the best things about these communities. I've learned a lot about other aircraft in these communities, so why not share what you got? But if you want to see something different, let me know. Thanks a lot, guys.